Thanks, Jack.
Hello and welcome to episode 4. Yes, you heard it right. Episode 4 of Balls, Blazers and Backchat with your regular hosts, me, Scants, and Catty, who's on the other side of the screen. How are you doing, Catty?
Very good, mate. Very good. Very excited. Probably the most excited I've been in the 4 episodes.
I must say, in our little pre-chat that we always do, there's been a lot of excitement, and there's a big smiley face on the bottom of the screen. And probably lots of people will recognise him already. But Peter Engledow, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. Delighted to be with you today.
Thank you. And you're joining us all the way from South Africa. Where are you in South Africa at the moment?
We're living in Paarl, which is about 45 minutes from Cape Town, the hub of school rugby.
Lovely stuff. And what's the weather like?
It's beautiful. I've just actually come out from the mountains. I did a trail run, and it's 30-odd degrees, sunshine. Dark now, this evening. Sunday night, 8 o'clock, and I'm still awake. Got me going there.
Good stuff, good stuff. And you see you've dusted off the club jacket. When do you think, how long ago was it since you last had that out?
Oh, the blazer.
Yeah.
Actually, never washed as well. I was told you never washed this blazer. I've got all the marks, and Nicky Coleman, Tom Coleman, they all got part of the marks. They're all part of this blazer. And of course, Catty, as you mentioned, Catty's also involved in this. No, it's good times. I don't obviously get to wear it often. Obviously, our boys are blazers now, but I just love this blazer, and I thought, what an opportunity to wear it tonight.
Nice one. Excellent. Well, a massive thanks to you for joining all the way from South Africa, which is awesome. Obviously, our furthest afield guest. We haven't had the first one outside of Stortford. So I don't know how we'll beat this next week, but let's crack on with the show. First thing, before we do a little rundown of what's going to be on the show, obviously lots of people will have heard of the sad news of Bev Clark passing away, which was sort of late February, a little over a week ago now. And probably the most fitting way to send Bev off for the club and sort of, us as a senior squad would have been to be at the club, playing a game of rugby. But unfortunately, we obviously can't do that. So sort of on behalf of myself, Marcus, and the senior squad, I'd like to sort of thank Bev for everything he did for the club, and obviously condolences to all his family and close friends. I sort of remember Bev, obviously, in recent years being up at the club in his club blazer, supporting sort of pretty much every home match, and probably sporting a glass of red wine as most of the old Blazer Brigade do. But Bev was a player at the club, a converted footballer that I've read, but quickly turned into a first 15 tight head prop. I'm not sure footballer to prop would probably happen nowadays, but obviously did back in Bev's. And then, as a supporter of the club, stints as a chairman and a president, and it was under his leadership that the current clubhouse was built. So there's obviously Bev was a massive part of the club, and I have got a couple of stories courtesy of Mike Whitting. So thanks to Mike for this, just to sort of represent sort of Bev's personality, and they link quite nicely. And the first one is that Bev and friends were at the Dorchester Hotel for the annual Stable Lads boxing competition. Not sure what that is, but there was an auction at this place, and there was a greyhound gifted by Victor Chandler to be auctioned. Bev and all his mates had sort of pre-agreed a maximum price that they bid for this greyhound. Eventually, they were relieved that the greyhound was sold for a great deal more money than this price that they'd agreed. But then, to everyone's horror, they realised Bev, sitting at the back of the room, was still bidding and actually won the greyhound. At the greyhound's first trial, it broke from the chaps, jumped over the fence and run up to the trainer to be petted. It turned out to be completely useless and never ran. To be fair, the bloke who sold them the greyhound offered them another, but this was equally as useless. So both greyhounds found new homes, and they never let Bev bid again. But perhaps more successfully, Bev was back at the Dogs and received a phone call with someone trying to sell him a horse for £1,500. After a few hours and more beers, Bev actually negotiated and bought the horse for £1,000. The horse was a 3-mile chaser, was called Jaunter, and won 9 races over the 4 years that they had it. At the start of one season, Jaunter had a warming up race at Fakenham. The trainer knew the owner of the favourite, which was strongly fancied. Bev backed the favourite. After a mile, Jaunter was tailed off, but all of a sudden, horses began falling and Jaunter got his second wind. At the last, Jaunter came to challenge the favourite and sailed by to win comfortably. Bev was speechless. So, obviously, probably a couple of stories that are maybe slightly testament to Bev's character there. Obviously, full of life, and that was shown at the club. So, we'll raise our glasses to Bev. Cheers. So, to crack on with the show, first up, we've got a little rugby update from Marcus, which I think is probably some good news. We've obviously got Pete joining us, so we're gonna talk all things Pete's time at the club and sort of South Africa, what's Pete's cracking on with now, and then we'll have a bit of chat at the end with perhaps some South African insider knowledge on Lions. And a little bit of Six Nations, considering England's woes continue. So over to you, Marcus.
Yeah, just a quick one then. Obviously, the RFU announced on Friday sort of the road to recovery. Some of it is still subject to the government's roadmap, but I've kind of made some dates here, which are sort of hopefully some checkpoints for us. So Tuesday, the 30th of March, hopefully we're going to sort of start training at the club. The week commencing the 26th of April, we can start playing adapted rules. So normal rugby without scrums and mauls. Full contact training can start hopefully the 18th, so the week commencing the 17th of May. And then full contact normal rule rugby can start week commencing the 31st of May. So fingers crossed that we get as far as that and there's no sort of hiccups in the way, and fingers crossed we're going to get a number of games in May against some other sides, which I've mentioned earlier before. Obviously that's still got a few things to do before that point, but yeah, it's positive, mate. And
have you got do you know if there's a meeting at all lined up with sort of between the clubs of this East Anglian competition?
We're going to chat this week, but again, we're going to wait to see how the government's obviously roadmap recovers and go from there, really. But positive, and hopefully there's going to be some rugby this year for the senior squad, and I definitely think there's going to be some youth rugby and minis rugby. So hopefully we can have a good little finish to the season and play through till May, and then back in September time.
Marcus, are you guys going to play a bit of summer rugby?
Hopefully, yeah. So the RFU have allowed the season to sort of slightly go on a bit longer, but we don't want to have an impact on start of pre-season next year. So we'll probably look to train and play up till the end of May, have a few weeks off in June, and then hit the ground running with a couple of pancake flapjacks in June.
Fantastic. Always good for you.
We're going to have to get the vaccine.
So can I just ask, what you're saying is, are you going to actually play matches, but it's not going to count for anything? It's just sort of friendlies or just to get the guys back into the swing of things? Yeah,
that's it, mate. Just to get the boys back into some sort of contact, prepping the bodies for next season. We felt as a coaching squad, along with our S&C coach, that there would be benefit. Very professional, yeah. There'll be benefit in getting some stuff done this year prior to next season, and hopefully, when we do come back for pre-season for next season, that we're that little bit further ahead in our physical prep.
Who's your S&C coach? Gilly?
No, Gilly was, but Gilly stepped away two or 3 years ago.
Yeah, three. I'd say
three seasons ago. And we got Ben Sheed. So Ben was with Sarries Academy for a number of years. He's now with British Rowing. But Sheethy will be Sheethy's carrying on as S&C.
Fantastic.
Are people playing club rugby out where you are at the moment, Pete?
No, so our current situation is we've gone down to level 1. So restrictions. I mean, we had a total ban. We went to look where bottle stores were closed. We stayed at home, and it's gone back down to level 1 now. So we can start training, non-contact training, and the clubs accept the same. And we're looking in the next week or two to get that go ahead for a 4-week contact training, and then my first match we're hoping to play the 10th of April. We're worried about this third wave arriving, similar to what's happened to you guys. The stats here are that we all get hit as winter approaches. Excuse me. We're going to get potential third wave of this COVID, so we're trying to load as many matches as possible and hopefully get a bit of a season.
Is there any Curry Cup going on at the moment, Pete?
Yeah, so professionally they're playing. There's called, I think, the Rainbow franchise or Rainbow Cup. We finished the Curry Cup that went through for the first time ever. We played through Christmas, New Year, which was quite cool for us.
Yeah.
Like your braai or barbecue. Watching rugby, on 2nd of January, which is unheard of here. So they've finished the Curry Cup and they've started with another. They're basically giving the teams opportunity to get game time because obviously with 14 is joining a Pro 14 from South Africa, which is exciting for us. So that's good. I'll tell you what though, I'm impressed with the Gallagher Premiership at the moment. The quality of rugby is unbelievable.
Mate, it's very good, yeah.
So good to watch. Brilliant to watch. Gone
are the days of the 9-6 Sale Worcester on a Friday night. It's quite exciting now, isn't it?
Yeah, delighted to see that. Okay.
Yeah, I think
Is the Stortford brand still playing running rugby, or is Tommy Coleman brought in a bit of a conservative approach?
I'll let you go on that, Scants.
I think still free-flowing running rugby. I think we've adapted a little bit since we're settled in that one. I think a few of the teams probably worked out how we played, and we had to sort of consolidate a little bit. But we're certainly not a pushover maul lot. I think we're still scoring some pretty flary tries. I think our wingers, Duffy, haven't they? Duffy, Joss, Hanks our back three have been pretty electric for the last couple of seasons, haven't they? So I think they've characterised us quite a lot, which is great. So Marcus, do you want me to let you introduce sort of Pete and kick him off with a question?
Yeah, no. So very exciting that I persuaded Pete to come on here tonight. I think it's coming up to 10 years, Pete, since you left the club after the 2011-12 season with a big win against Canterbury at home. But so the second segment tonight is going to be named the Engledale era. Many people at the club remember this era. Four very, very important years of the club, and it's quite nice to me actually. So since asking Pete to come on, it's given me an opportunity to reflect about those years as well. And I've just written down some things here and things we've done and just the fun we had, but also the quality we got on the pitch. And I think no doubt that Pete was one of the main reasons where we are today. And Pete started this upward curve of the club. When Pete joined, we were languishing at the bottom of London 1, which is now National 3, just about survived. Pete came in first session, was like, you boys are massively unfit. But anyway, so Pete, thanks for joining us, mate, and it's great to see you. So it's obviously quite a big question, but obviously little things will come of it. But what were your memories from your time at the club for the 4 seasons?
Yeah, Marcus, obviously that's a difficult question to answer just in a single question like this. First and foremost was I knew it was the right club to go to. A lot of people don't know I was actually approached by OA. I forget the chairman's name. He approached me to go to OA. I just didn't feel right about it. And obviously Colin Johnson got me done a bit of coach education, and he said, "Come and see the club." And it's funny how your coaching career goes, if you align yourself to certain clubs. And Stortford had sort of the values. I loved what they were trying to do. You've got to remember back in those days, I don't know how you guys are now, but you know yourself, there's no payment. You don't really have a front row, and you're just up against it every week. It's like a fight, a dog fight. And I loved it. We also came in, and I was thinking about this on my run this season. My father had passed away, left me a bit of money, and I decided, right, I'm going to go to New Zealand. And just before I joined Stortford, I went to New Zealand for 2 weeks on this high performance course. And it was almost like everything took off at the same time. Like a young, talented group, all homegrown talent through the club system. You know, I got to meet guys like McCray, Cattell, and Tommy Coleman. And sort of we just took off, and there were some old heads there as well that eventually moved on after a second year. But, you know, your Bearsy and what's your man who played second row, back row, the South African.
Alex Calenzo.
Yeah. So it was a terrific time, and the club had the spirit, and you know, you had the Blazers, and people take the Blazers for granted, but you had such a good following. And you know, it was like I said, it was against the odds. We didn't have the facilities, the gym, and you know how it was. We were in a container. Yeah. But it was special. And
first pre-season sessions were pretty tough. We'd, I think Pete had identified our lack of fitness. I think we ran a 1500 meter first session over at the high school. Ed Merivale came with Pete across from Welling and smashed us all. He absolutely destroyed us.
Did Pete? You brought Ed with you? Did you? Was that your key signing? Your first signing?
No, it wasn't a key signing. He was down in Essex somewhere, and he decided to join us. But I brought 2 sappers in as well. Actually, 3 Jacques. You remember Jacques?
And Jacques Noirday.
Jacques Noirday, yeah. And then the Charles brothers.
Yeah, John and Wayne.
And then William and Chunky.
Chunky, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, first season. It was great fun. Like I think what Pete brought to the club was again a higher level of professionalism. But we trained hard on the field, but we also had a great time off the field. I'm sure I'll talk about a few of the other bits off the field in a bit. But and the first season ended with winning the President's Cup against OAs, who obviously Pete mentioned a minute ago. We're trying to chase them as well, and I think we played them 3 or 4 times that year. Lost to them in the league twice. But then we beat them in the cup final. No one really gave us much chance. They had Paul Gustard playing for them in the back row. But what do you remember from that day, Pete?
Well, funny enough you say about Gussie. I remember going to the ref before the game, and I said, listen, just warning you, we're a bunch of good guys. But if Gussie gets in the ear and keeps talking, we're going to do the same thing. So it depends how you handle him. I'm telling you now, I don't encourage you with the players, but if he starts talking, we're going to start talking a lot. And then he got carded. I don't know if
he got binned. Yeah.
He got binned, and he came up and he still said, "You fucking talk to me." And I started laughing. I said, "Of course I did. You're a menace." But what I do remember in half time, I got into the rest. Yeah, and I don't know if you remember Harry. He used to work with us at the RFU. Harry was watching me. Harry Harrison, and Harry said after the game, "Did you go into the rest?" Yeah, didn't you? I said, "I found him so heavy, Harry." I was disappointed with him, and I let him know how bad he was lifting the game. Harry said, I saw it from a mile away, and we were our coaches. They were running around doing stupid things. But yeah, I was quite relaxed that day. And as you said, I don't think there was any expectation on us. But between us, I think we knew that we could have tried. And you know how it was against the It was one of those awesome battles. And I missed that. I loved that as well. But I loved that about the club. And the same as Amfield was my worst. We used to struggle against them. We used to hate going up there. But I'm sure we took them the one game, and then we've always given them a good run. And then we got to see they're in the championship now.
Yeah, and they're doing very well.
They're always bought in lots of players. But I mean, they're doing well, aren't they?
They're a good club. Yeah, we've probably one of the clubs we've only beaten a few times. We lost to them in the playoff in 2014-15. But they've obviously got it going well. They've got Paul Turner in charge. But yeah, Ampthill always a bit of a bogey side for us, unfortunately.
Yeah. Turner's a good coach. I remember him back at our age. Good guy. I want to quickly tell you about the story about we had gone down to Dorking. I remember we had that guy come in from Leicester University, the big second row. We always struggle with props in second row. And he was an English boy, and we all got excited because he arrived there. It was a big package. And after playing Dorking, they had that rough South African there.
Yeah.
I forget his name now.
Armin
he came off the field. Oh, yes. And he said to me, listen, your second row is a fucking puppy. He's all a puppy. I played with him all day. So the next week we were against Ampthill. I remember I wrote him a little note. I said, no more puppy dogs. As we went on the field, I gave him them right to use. It didn't help though. It's we didn't come to. But that's where guys like Kalenza and Fairs, they brought that toughness, you know. So that was good for the first 2 years. But then we started changing and we developed, and obviously for me it's been exciting to see how the clubs move forward. But that President's Cup was definitely a very special day for me. And then the other special memory I have is definitely going to Jersey. And I'll never forget the build-up. We were in the zone, and we should have won that game. I don't know if you remember that game. I think we lost 15-12 or something like that.
Yeah.
We'd gone to Jersey, and they had all these big stars and that, and we were up, and I think we got a card. But anyway, we lost the game, but it was awesome. And the other difficult team that we used to play, Marcus, was down in sort of the Richmond area. They were up and down like a yo-yo. They'd get some sappers in. And then
Barnes.
Do you remember Barnes? Barnes were one of the first sides that adopted the 2-4-2 system.
Yeah.
And they ran us ragged the one day. But I actually met their coach afterwards. I said, listen, what have you guys done? We didn't know what was coming.
I remember at half time, I said to the bloke, I said, mate, I've never chased the ball so much. They were playing from like width to width, just moving the ball, and they were all very skillful Aussies and Saffers, and they just pinged it around. But they were always up, then they'd come back down again, and but always a nice.
There's another team that had a lot of Fijians down in Essex. But we got the better of them towards my last 2 seasons.
Gravesend?
Our last 2 seasons together. Yes, Gravesend. They had that Fijians, and they had that corner. You know, I don't know what they're called.
Fiji corner.
Yeah, Fiji corner.
Yeah, but they were they had a couple of Fijian back row boys, didn't they? Pretty solid physical lads. But what about any memories off the field, Pete? Because there was plenty of
we've got plenty of stories to talk about there. No, my ultimate favourite and unfortunately we don't have the club system in South Africa anymore. The club rugby still happens, but just a lot of boys stop playing after school, or if they do continue at university, they stop after that. The club system's just not in place here. It's unfortunately just with everything that happens in our country. The club rugby is thriving in the communities and that, but it's just from our side, a lot of guys give up playing rugby after school, especially. But my favorite memory was the teas and red wines, or the teas and ports on the bus trip home, and then Russell Cattell singing, and the sing songs were, you don't get that here. You don't get the singing, and they don't understand it either. They're just like something that they're not used to. So I've tried to instill it, and we're trying to get sing songs going after games and like that. So that's a massive memory for me. And then the club afterwards. I mean, you know, win or lose, you got the players, and they all want to give you advice, which was great. But the guys got together, and we used to always have a good time. You know, we know what we did in the week and or where we were in the club. And so that was special for me. And then some of the things we did, like, I don't know if you remember the pedal and pipe.
Pedal and pints,
Matt Malcolm. You remember him?
He was crazy. Yeah.
Amazing. But that was fun times. I love the pedal and pipe.
When you did the pedal and pot, you did the pedal and pints. We were playing scants over at Rickling Green.
Oh right, yeah.
And these boys, they cycled up from like Stansted way, and they came round the pitch, went to the pub on the far corner of the cricketers.
The cricketers, yeah.
All like they must have been 10 pints in, and then they all sitting on the sideline cheering away. It was like, it was quite funny. I was playing cricket. I didn't do the pedal and pint, and then you see them pedalling off on the way back, and they went down to Manudon. I think they had a few crashes on the way down there. It's quite steep, but yeah, it was some really good stuff off the field, wasn't it, Pete?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Good.
How about do you remember the Centurion, the 100 Club? Do you remember that one?
Oh, of course I do.
Yeah. So this is a funny one, Scant. So Pete, for the whole year, this is at the end of the first year. It's like, boys, at the end of the season, we've got to do the Centurion. We were like, okay, what, 100 shots of beer every minute for 100 minutes. And we were like, okay, so we won the President's Cup, finished the season. Pete was like, right, meet at the club this Saturday. We went round the back of the club, out in the backfield by pitch 4, all got our beers, shot glasses. We did a bit of fancy dress. Pete was giving it the big one. Now, come on, boys, you've got to make sure you get to the end. There was about 10 of us, and Stiggy had bailed on about 60, just chundered everywhere because he'd been out the night before. So we're sort of having a bit of banter. Pete's getting stuck into Coleman because obviously everyone knows Tom's not the best drinker.
Yeah.
So Pete was like, "You'll never do this, Tom. You haven't got it in you, blah, blah, blah." So we get into the 90s and everything's looking pretty good. And so we get to 99 and Pete picks up his 99th one. He goes, "Cheers, boys. Welcome to the 100 Club." He sips it and he just goes everywhere. So Pete, to this day, never did do the Centurion.
Didn't make it.
Not for Stortford, but one time in Zimbabwe, I managed to get to 169. I decided to go out on the 69.
But mate, but Coleman beat you that day, mate. Tommy beat you.
One of the few times. So the other good memories I have, Marcus, was like it's weird, like just small things that made the club so special to me. Was on a Thursday night, I did finish coaching, and Tubby was there, and Nicky Coleman was a legend, and I'd have a pint or two with them before driving home. And that was the downside of not living in Stortford. I always have to make a 45-minute drive home, so that was difficult. But then things like the fireworks evening and hosting, just the Colts Cup, and there was just always special things happening at the club. And then the volunteer day, I mean, it was awesome. The club's amazing. It's probably, definitely one of the highlights of my rugby career when I think of a club and what it did for me and how much I enjoyed my rugby as a coach with the guys. It's just fantastic.
Well, I think, mate, your legacy is definitely still living on strong within the club. So, you've been a huge part of the club, and I'm sure even Scants.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Marcus, really, because I guess it links in quite nicely that obviously you played under Pete and now you're obviously coaching the first team. I wondered if there was sort of any influences that you've taken from perhaps Pete and you're now maybe applying.
I think, the two things that stick out for me was how hard we trained on the field. So, we gave ourselves every chance to win at a weekend, and I think one thing, and Pete, I'll sure agree, is we never lost because we weren't fit enough. We were always, as fit as we could be, and we always went out there and we played to the 80th minute. And even when, the season was over in terms of there's no promotion or relegation, we were in the mid-table. We would always finish the season well because we were, proud to play for the club, and, we were good mates. And I think that also came from what we did off the field. And I think within Pete's 4 years, like some of the stuff we're talking about, like the pedal and pint and the trips to Wales where we did the assault courses in Tenby, and there was just so much, like so many good memories off the field. And you almost went on the field with your best mates, and it meant a lot more than sort of just random players you might play with the season and then they'll disappear. And I think the culture really developed that year. And I suppose for me, that's why I've always sort of enjoyed the off-field stuff as well as the on-field, because you drink with your mates and you play with your mates, so it's it means a lot more when you go out there together.
Yeah.
And
Jack, sorry, if I could just come in there. I think the key thing for me, and it's actually happening at Paul Boys High where I'm now. I've got 3 very young coaches working with me. And it's very similar to what I had with Marcus and Tommy. They both work for the RFU or through the community rugby scheme. And we were able to do a lot of coaching together. But at the same time, I was working with them, and although they were still players at the time, they were coaching themselves, and they were taking ideas, and we worked on like projects. Like, okay, let's talk about breakdown, how we're going to develop breakdown at the school level, what's key. So the boys were involved there. Tommy was obviously, we spent a lot of time talking coaching. So I think both of them, not that I mentored them or developed their coaching, but because they were working in the environment with me and they were exposed to a lot of conferences, etc. And then they obviously ran that thing at the club, which was really nice. That's what I actually want to ask you guys. I see Mellon was also breaking through and doing exceptional. He was at Stortford as well. I know he went to school somewhere across the border, but Mellon's, I'm sure, him and his brothers were definitely at Stortford, if I remember correctly. Marcus, is that correct?
Yeah. I think I played against maybe Max when he was playing for Felsted. I don't remember him ever at the club. Did you coach him as a youngster at the club at all, Marcus? Or?
I think I might have done. I think when he got to about under 16s, then school rugby sort of took off at Felsted and Sarries. So we haven't seen him up there much. But I know his brothers played. They played in the same. One of his brothers played in the same Colts as Ben Cook and Sam
Jack
James and Apples and that lot, and Jack Cullen. So
yeah.
But yeah, he's.
The reason I remember is the mom used to drop them off. We had a horse riding keeper, and we used to always remember her for that. Tommy did, especially.
Yeah.
Oh, good old Tommy.
But yeah, he's probably been the most recent high level. But then you don't see him at past 16. You don't see these players because they're tied up with school rugby. And
I think the way academies work now is that I think they're probably encouraged to play school first 15 rugby, and probably outside of that is academy. A lot of academy stuff.
He played against us about 3 years ago for OAs. He was on loan from Sarries to OAs. And he played a couple of games.
He's at Bristol Bears now, because I've got a friend of mine, Omar, who actually went to the same school as I did.
Yeah.
Who's the defensive coach for Bristol Bears.
Yeah.
He's how good it's so good to watch.
I think it's a good. I think it's a good job he's playing at Bristol and not at Sarries at the moment with how they're performing, because I think they lost to Cornish Pirates yesterday, or the day before.
How good were Ealing qualifiers? He's been twice. I mean,
yeah,
unbelievable.
I don't think it's going to be as easy as they thought to come up back to the Prem.
No.
Well, West Ham, Marcus. When you drop down out of the top flight, it's always difficult to come back.
We're back though. We're back. Oh, we've lost Pete. Where's he gone now?
I know I'm back.
But yeah, I think.
Just quickly,
go on.
Marcus, do you remember Nick Coleman's speech at half time? Yeah, Mickey Coleman had the legendary speech at half time, and we were in intense battle, and I was giving a bit of tactical feedback, and I was like, "This is what we got to do now." And Mickey said, "Just remember, the sun's in their eyes." In their eyes. Meantime, it's us. We all burst out laughing. But I think it was the antidote to take the nerves away and just go out and play a Stortford way.
I think I remember that. I remember that.
Yes, we had a giggle about it. The other thing I enjoyed, Marcus, and there's a specific song that I remember, and by Coldplay, is when I left the club. It was an emotional night for me there. And I went through sort of the history of what happened and what we did. And it was just, oh man, that night was special for me.
Was that when we sang in the change room after
we
the
did
game?
A thing in the clubhouse.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, yeah.
And we beat Canterbury last game of the season.
We didn't beat them, we slaughtered them.
Yeah, because they put 50 points on us first game of the year.
Yes, you remember that? Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember
we turned up.
When we went and did that tour?
What was
remember
that?
We did that tour. We did the tour down south, the south of England.
Yeah, we went to
the bottom end of.
We went to Deal. We did the folk festival.
Yes.
Ed Merivale. Ed Merivale.
Correct. Yeah, Merivale. Yeah, very good. Yeah, fantastic.
I miss Ed. I think we killed him off when we did the tour down to Canterbury, wasn't it? That was, I think, Ed's last involvement in managing the first team was us killing Ed off on that trip. But
so Pete, Ed managed the first team for a while. Then I think he moved away, but he's back in Stortford now. So hopefully he'll get back involved in some level.
Hopefully playing.
Oh, fantastic. What about his knee? Did his knee
his knees gave up on him, definitely.
Pete, so I know Ed most well because I played in the second team with Ed for a long time, and he actually played fly half for, I think, for 2 seasons and had a lot of success, but not with the boot. He had a good passing, very good passing game. I think he could throw a double miss quite easily off both hands, but he never had quite the kicking game, I don't think.
No.
Marcus,
what about Jimmy Ray? What's happened to Jimmy?
Yeah, Jimmy, Lord Ray is still playing.
Still playing.
He's the oldest in the squad.
Oh, he's still making the first team.
He's in the squad. Yeah. He played a couple last year. I think he had a couple of injuries the season before that. But yeah, he still knows his way to the try line, old Jimmy.
Oh, the speed's still there.
He's lost a bit of pace.
He's still a fantastic player.
Is Simo still at the club?
No, Simo. Where's Simo now? Simo moved up to.
He's at school, isn't he? I forget. But isn't he coaching? Isn't he doing some work for Bury now as well?
Coaching over at Bury, yeah. So Simo's over at Bury. So we might be playing Bury in the East Anglia Cup, like a bit of a friendly against them. So hopefully, you see, Simo comes up the club a couple of times a year.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, he's still involved.
What about Calenza and Fazy and the boys? Do they pop into the club?
Fairsy's up there. Colenzo's moved away for a while, but again, he'll be back a couple of times a season. Stewie has them. People like that, yeah, they're still knocking around. Big personalities at the club. So Pete, where did so when you left Stortford in 2012, you went to St. Joseph's, didn't you?
Yeah, I went to St. Joseph's College, and we basically started there, and I had a season with them, and then we went on tour to South Africa. Went to South Africa on a 3-week tour, which was great. And it was great. I had guys like Ludlam, who's now in the England squad. There's a kid who plays in the England Sevens. So there were a number of good boys. And just before I left, it's quite interesting. When we arrived decided to go to St. Joe's, there's a map of Africa, and Zelda said, we're meant to be here. But she didn't realize that the map of Africa actually was, this is our leading point, we're going back, because when I went on that high performance course in New Zealand, I met the Free State coach at the time called Harvey Sharif.
Yeah.
And I shared everything I had. Like when I was in England, I shared stuff with him. And in South Africa, they don't share easily. It's changing now, but the coaches don't share. It's like everything's secret. It all was. And I said, God, it's so different in England. And I've got to compliment the RFU and the courses I went in England. It was unbelievable for my development. But obviously in New Zealand, I met Harvey's, and I was at St. Joe's, and we just about to play in the big St. Joe's Cup, which is the top 20 schools or 15 schools in the country. Then down in Ipswich, and we played in this weekend festival, and it was really cool. And basically, just before the festival, I was like, listen, mate, you wanted to become a pro coach back in South Africa. So I was like, okay, I'm in a situation now. But I was honest, and we managed to win the cup, which was amazing. And a good bunch of kids, and we had a good laugh, and it was fantastic. And once again, I had young coaches working with me, and it was exciting. And then I got the job at Rugby. So basically, 10 days after winning the St. Joe's Cup, we flew back to South Africa.
Yeah.
And and then from there, that's I was 5 years in Kimberley, not the nicest place in the world, but unbelievable people. And got to be a pro coach for 5 years, which was fantastic.
Any? I know Grickwires aren't obviously one of the top. They're obviously in the Curry Cup, but they're not. You know, I wouldn't say they're sort of the big team. So they're always the underdogs.
Yeah. So my coaching has followed a similar pattern. That's Stortford, same sort of problems with Griffiths. Don't have the finance to get the best props. To give you a good example, we beat the Sharks 10-9 at the Shark Tank. Their front row was the two Duplessis brothers, Bismarck and Yanni.
Yeah.
And we had the Beast at Moosehead. Their combined budget at the time was 12 million, just the front row. My entire team squad, or the whole squad, including, was 12 million. Now, so you're competing against, in South Africa, you compete against the money, and it's just, so you try, like I used to find club players and try and develop the boys to, come through the system. But you're the underdog every time you run out. But we managed to take some big scalps, and in my last 2 years, we've been pleased constantly. But it's a continuous, because as you do well at Stortford or at Peppers, as soon as the players get recognised, they get bought by Province, the Bulls or the Sharks. Yeah. You continue, every year you're losing players.
Very difficult to hold on to the
best
players.
It's hard work. Yeah, you just can't hold on to them. The money just, and then the guys are getting opportunities overseas and even in lower leagues, because the money and the exchange rate is worth them just leaving and going.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot about coaching in the professional area. And a lot of people ask me now, like, schoolboy rugby is massive here in South Africa, Marcus. And, Tommy will tell you a good story about when they played Paul Roos. When they came out, it's huge. And boys, rightly or wrongly, but boys, they play at school, but they get contracts and stuff like that to playing good schoolboy rugby. The academy is not as strong as it is in England.
Yeah.
So it's massive. What's great is the difference is in professional rugby in South Africa, the size have diminished, but there's just so much going on. And TV, every game's televised. I mean, we get Australia, New Zealand, we get England. It's just rugby on all the time. So people don't really go out to watch games anymore like they do in England. That's schoolboy rugby. I mean, we played in my first interseason. There's over 25,000 people watching a schoolboy rugby game.
25,000?
Wow.
It's massive. If you Google that, Paul Boys versus Paul Finn, you just can't believe the rivalry and the years of history and stuff. So it's good because few schools have been at, a lot of schools have it. So that was something that I wasn't prepared for, having been in Curry Cup and playing Bulls at the Bulls or the Sharks at the Sharks game. You just don't. The difference is the kids, like Stortford, live for the club or live for the school. And they start in grade 8, they get to grade 12, and all they want to do is represent the school. In a game in blue, boys are blue and white, like Stortford. So, and it's fascinating. Marcus, I've never got, we lost by 1 point in our first year. We had a kick to win it. We missed the kick. And it was just, I haven't gone through any emotion like that in my life before. But more for the boys. The boys, it's so big for them. The whole town stops for a week.
But obviously, like you said, a lot of these boys, if they don't get pro contracts, they stop playing rugby. So it sounds a bit like America, where like you don't get an NBA contract, you stop playing. Like, how does that sit with you? Because I know you're big into wanting these lads to sort of continue their rugby journey. So does that?
Yeah, so obviously you know me. I'm big on education as well, and I boys go to university. And I said, listen, even if you don't play for under 20As or whatever, don't play social rugby, but just keep playing. It's an awesome game. And yeah, so the boys who go to university continue to play, but a lot of them also give up. I mean, what happens is you've got plenty of cities, very strong schools, and some boys go to academies, the rest go to university. And if they don't get selected in the A side, they're used to playing first, a lot of them just fall out. It's very sad what's happening to rugby in South Africa on that side. But there's so much talent. I think we've got over 350 players playing abroad at the moment. Like I'm talking professional players.
Yeah,
It's incredible.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we'll talk about sort of Lions as the last one in the set, but it certainly seems in the English Premiership that obviously the South African influence. I know, obviously, probably maybe Sarries were one of the first clubs to bring a lot in, and then Sale more recently have obviously filled their ranks. So the quality of player coming out of South Africa at the moment is probably, certainly in the English game. As Aussie or Kiwi or Pacific Island influence is nowhere near as big as the South African. So,
Look,
so great.
Without getting too political, what's happening is, obviously there's a lot of, to be careful what I say, a lot of white players are feeling that they're not getting a fair opportunity anymore. So, like you'll see that a lot of school kids recently are either going to America or Japan now, and they're unbelievably good players. There's a lot of French clubs who have direct links to some of our schools. So Montpellier, for example, they take some of the kids directly after school, feed them in the system, and in 4 years they qualify to play for France. So a lot of kids are taking those opportunities now, which is sad in a way, but you can't blame them either. So that's what that's the situation we're in South Africa at the moment. But look, don't get me wrong, in the community, club rugby is also thriving. I mean, the talent, the guys, the Chesman Colbys of the world, there's hundreds of them playing club rugby. It's unbelievable. There's just so much talent, but it's the channels and where England and, I wouldn't just say England, but Ireland, Scotland, the channels and the way they manage the rugby boys is fantastic. And I also have to say, I think the coaching structure and the way that the coaching is done is also top quality there.
Awesome. Should we just have a final word about Lions? Obviously, a good opportunity with Pete on to represent the South African side. In terms of the situation, it was quite interesting that you think, Pete, that the Lions that South Africa are quite keen to play the Lions in the UK.
Well, I think I'm not. It will depend on the financial contract that he signed. At the moment, I think that to not have the Lions will cripple South African rugby. Not having it in the culture will be a massive blow for the economy. Just hotels, guest houses, restaurants, pubs. As you know, it's massive, and it's obviously a fantastic opportunity for people to come here and enjoy a Lions tour. And we were lucky enough to be here last year, 12 years ago, when the last Lions tour took place. Steve Curtis was actually here because the most expensive restaurant you could go to. Molly decides to say, let's go there, and I've got about 10 mates with me. They're all looking at me going, he's paying this tour, mate. I ended up paying half that tour with Curtis. Him and I had to cover that. But it was good. We were both out there, and it was fantastic. But it was very special. And I think we'll lose a lot of the history of the Lions not having it here. But if there is a financial benefit for the South African rugby, which is vital for us, and we can get to play in England and in the Lions, then I think I just think the Lions have to happen. I think also for you guys, I think we don't want that to ever die.
No, I think people forget though is South Africa are World Cup champions. They have hardly played a game since they destroyed us in the final, because what was it, 6 months later the pandemic hit. They didn't play in the Rugby Championship last year, safety reasons, I think. But like South Africa, the top side in the world, as in the current world champions. And I suppose for them it's been disappointing, Pete, that they haven't really actually had an opportunity to play under that banner of being world champions.
Yeah, I think if you remember the last series, it was just amazing. It was fascinating, and I really hope I don't mind if it happens in England. I think it just has to happen, and I think people are desperate for it as well. And I think, just going back to England, what's your take on on England and what's happened. I mean, I think that Scotland and Wales have definitely improved, and Wales have gone through a slump. Wales have been very lucky, but then they go against England and they obviously hit their stats, confidence up, and managed two, I think, lucky wins. And who would have ever expected that?
Yeah, I think England were never going to be able to ride the wave of the sort of the World Cup and obviously beating New Zealand for forever. And I don't know, it seems perhaps what Eddie Jones is doing at the moment maybe seems a little bit frustrating with him being so maybe stubborn on some of his player selection. And I think with COVID and what's obviously happened with Saracens, I think mentally, I think that must have affected the team. So I think they need a small change up slightly. I don't think it's any dramas. I think, yeah, we're not going to win the Six Nations, but I think Scotland have certainly been performing better. France have been what I'd say out of this world with the way they're playing rugby at the moment, and Wales and Ireland have been there or thereabouts. So we're not at the top of the pile anymore. I think the competition is a lot closer run.
Yeah, I think one thing I said in the first or second podcast, Eddie Jones has got a 4-year plan in place here. He's building for this World Cup. And I know I said about when he was Japan coach, he basically for 4 years coached Japan how to beat South Africa, which they did at that 2015 World Cup. So I'm hoping, obviously at the moment he looks like he's lost his way a bit, but I think he's got a plan in place for that 2023 World Cup in South Africa, in France, sorry. But yeah, there's got to be some players. Sam Simmons is obviously, I know it's always getting boring talking about it, but he's got to get a go at some point. But then Billy Vunipola was probably one of our better players against Wales.
Yeah, I think he's got to play around with some of the talent. I mean, why wouldn't you? If he's preparing for the next World Cup, or why he wouldn't be blooding some of the quality players in the Premiership at the moment. So,
yeah, I think from a coaching point of view, you guys know, you go through cycles. You ride the ups and enjoy it, and it goes well, and but you go through slumps. Everyone does with sport, but I think as long as the team knows where they're headed and where they're going. But I do think, I look at a side like Scotland has definitely improved. They've done well. Wales, like I said, I think they've been lucky that they've scraped 2 wins, and Sunday they keep England they keep winning. But France, for me, if you look at France, quite interesting. There's a friend of mine who's the kicking coach in France, Flock Solier. I speak to him a lot. There's definitely a massive effect of the defensive coach there, Sean Edwards.
Oh, huge.
Changed the mentality of the French. And then Flocky says, you won't believe it, he's changed them, the way they train, the way they do things. And I think, you've got to remember that the 2 under 20 sides at the World Cups in the past years have done exceptionally well.
Yeah.
And what's good about the head coach, he's picked those youngsters and he's saying, right, let's build. And they've kicked. They've got some wonderful youngsters. Yeah, Gaultier. And then they're doing very well. Very exciting. I think it's exciting and good for rugby as well. And I see rugby needs to be competitive between the top 10 teams, and we've got to win and lose some, and we've got to keep it exciting. Like Schumacher when he was winning Formula One, people stopped watching. It became boring. So in South Africa, Six Nations is massive. I absolutely love watching it, and I think the rugby's been very good, and I said it in the past, the standard of rugby and the conditions that you guys have been good. I mean, obviously, New Zealand just kicked off again, and I don't know if you're watching that, but the rugby is just incredible as well. So exciting times for rugby, I think, and it'll be interesting where it heads to in the next year or two before the World Cup.
It must be the big South African influence in Scotland and France. France, like you say, Pete, direct links with South African schools, and you look at the engine room, for example, the two big boys in a row, just smashing blokes, aren't they? They're just physical, and But like you say, they've changed their mindset. France, you'd always expect a couple of bad decisions, but now they seem to have got that out of the system. No brain snaps, and Sean Edwards, changing their defence. I mean, England should have got him in, definitely. I mean, we must have seen what he'd done to the Welsh defence. I don't know why we didn't go in for him. But
I was listening to another podcast, and I think the head coach, is it Gaultier? I think Rafael Ibanez works under him as well, and I think the connection was between Ibanez and Sean Edwards at Wasps.
Yeah.
I think that was basically got him in as a mate, I think, almost. So that was clever insight into some backroom coaching there. So, but yeah, I think World Rugby is developing massively. Hopefully the Pacific Islands can really keep developing and come through, and perhaps the Northern Hemisphere can finally start challenging these South African and Kiwi and Australian sides that seem to always turn up for a World Cup. So
yeah, I'd like to see more money go into and get the system right with the Islanders, the Tongas and the Samoans. And if they could strengthen and be a force. And Georgia, I think Georgia is in the act as well. They could get it right. I think suddenly you've got I'm quite excited for this whole world, this World Rugby competition. I think that would be good for us as well. But I would never take the Six Nations away from that. I think Six Nations is fantastic. But then again, the Super Rugby is dead. It's in the water, it's done, it's finished. And we've got 4 teams joining the Pro 14. The Pro 14s are interesting for me because what happens is you go over, let's say, for example, February, and you play Ulster in pouring rain in Belfast, and next week Ulster, and they're playing in 36 degrees heat in South Africa. So which makes it exciting as well. I just hope that it's going to encourage in the future, obviously it's difficult now, but a bit more travelling, that South Africans start travelling and, like the English do, and make it exciting. I hope it takes off. It's just difficult. It needs to be done properly, and I hope it does take off.
Is that the Super Rugby finish for South African teams?
Yeah. We're done.
That's a shame.
Our four top teams are coming to England or coming to Europe.
Well, that's good for us then. That'll improve the game in the UK.
It was quite funny. Free State had their first taste of Pro 14 or whatever the numbers was, and the next year 11 of their players went overseas. So it's unfortunately that's what's going to happen as well. But I read, I'm not sure if it's true, but I think they're going to limit teams to only 2 foreigners going forward in England and stuff, which would be interesting.
It'd be good for the young players, but I think you also do want the caliber of player, like your likes of who's the Sale 9, Scants, de Klerk. They're excitement machines, aren't they? People want to go out and watch.
Bristol Bears.
Yeah, Bristol Bears. Look at them. Yeah, Radradra and Piatow, people like that. You want to go and watch them, but then you want the young England players and young British.
I think there's a good balance. Whatever they're doing at the moment, I think there really seems to be a good balance for young British players, and then having some sheer international quality in the sides as well.
I don't think you guys realise how massive the Premiership is, like football in South Africa. Football is huge here. There's massive support for the teams, and I think what they've done in the rugby is going to, because there's more sappers in the game. People are watching a lot more rugby, the Gallagher and the Six Nations, because there's more, obviously more sappers involved. But just the quality of rugby, you just read Twitter, the people I follow, but they're all commentating on how good the quality of rugby was this weekend. In the Gallagher, and it's testament to England doing something right. But look at the football and look at the rugby. It's top quality at the moment, and quite exciting. I think England and France will dominate rugby worldwide going forward, just for competitions to watch.
Right, I think that's the most we've talked about proper rugby on this podcast for a while. But it's good to get an influence from UP, your view from a South African side, and obviously having far more years in the game than me and Marcus. It's nice to get a different opinion on it. I think, Marcus, do you want to? We'll tail ourselves up.
Yeah.
Thanks for all your insight, Pete, and we'll let Marcus finish you off with our last question. Then we'll let you go.
So, Pete, with all of our guests, we've asked them a question, which is basically, what's the best excuse you've used to stay up the club for an extra beer? Back when you were at Stortford, we all knew you liked a couple of beers after a good win at home. So, what were some of your excuses to stay for a bit longer and maybe come home a bit later?
Well, Marcus, as you know, I had a big rivalry with Tommy Coleman. So the pool table would always get the best of us, dancing on the ceiling. That was a fun time.
Down at the wheat sheaf.
Yes, correct. And no, but what used to happen, actually one day I was really responsible. I knew that there was a big night happening at the club. And I took my sleeping bag with and I said, right, I'm going to be responsible here. I'm actually going to have a good night and I'm going to then get in my sleeping bag. And I fell asleep in my car. And next thing I saw this torch early in the morning, and I'm sleeping away at the clubhouse. Torch in, open my door. What you doing? I'm sleeping. I'm being responsible. So I actually took my key away because I thought I'd drive, and I'm lying in my sleep. Took my key away, went down to the Stortford police station. Next morning I woke up with my sleeping bag. Had to trudge down to the police station. Get my key. Doing something right, and I go for Nicky Coleman was always in the street. Oh, that guy used to enjoy it, yeah, afterwards. So the Blazers and the boys is so special. Win or lose, because the club was amazing afterwards. And remember when the Aussie boys came over, Marcus?
Yeah, Charles, Wiley, Brock, and Churchy.
And they always had excuses to stay, didn't they?
Mate, it was good. It was win or lose, hit the booze.
Yeah,
I like your style there, Pete. That's a no excuse needed story. That's take your sleeping bag with you. So yeah, that's a good tactic. That I like that.
It's
awesome.
All right, thanks, guys. It's been very special.
Yeah, Pete.
Great to catch up.
So obviously, thanks.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if rugby does take off and it kicks off, Marcus, you need to find out. But if it is the 10-year, I'm willing to try and make an effort to get out there and get the home game. I'd love that.
Mate, we'd love to see you at the club. I know it's been a while since you've been up here, but yeah, mate, let us know when you're in town and vice versa. Hopefully we get out to South Africa, and whether the Lions happens this year or they postpone it or whatever, especially with the Pro 12 and the South African teams coming over. So, but mate, you would always be welcome at the club. And like I say, a big reason where we are today is because of your time at the club. So, mate, great to catch up.
Thank you very much. Good to see you, Marcus.
Awesome. So yeah, brilliant. Thanks for coming on, Pete. I hope everyone's enjoyed this. I think there's been plenty of rugby chat, good sight into sort of what Pete did for the club, what he's doing now, and South African rugby. So thanks for listening. Please like, share, all the usual stuff, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time for round 5 and a new special guest. Cheers, everyone.
Bye-bye.